Ladies and gentlemen, get ready to talk about one of the most legendary motorcycles in history. A bike that sounded as if the devil himself was screaming through the exhaust, that made any mere mortal feel like a MotoGP rider, and that, for reasons of fate, disappeared before its time. Today, we're going to tell the full story of the Honda NSR250. The 1980s, the golden age of motorcycling, when bikes were fast, light, and unfiltered. Honda was dominating competitions with its two-stroke engine technology and asked the million-dollar question. What if we gave ordinary people a piece of this madness? They didn't just want to make another sport bike for the street. They wanted to make a bike with racing DNA. So in 1986, the Honda NSR250R was born, a machine that would change the game forever. But what made it so special? It wasn't just any 250. It was designed as if it were a Grand Prix bike that accidentally ended up with a rearview mirror and a license plate. It had a V-twin two-stroke engine, ultra-light and explosive. It was so light it felt like a bicycle on steroids, and its acceleration was so violent and immediate that if you weren't ready, it made you reconsider all your life choices. The key was its technology inherited from racing. Honda wasn't satisfied with just making a fast bike. They equipped it with the RC valve system, which optimized power delivery across the entire rev range, ensuring you always had a brutal surge of power. Its aluminum chassis made it incredibly agile, allowing it to devour corners with surgical precision. Honda wanted to give people the closest possible experience to riding a GP bike on the street, and boy, did they succeed. It was a beast. One of those bikes that you don't just ride, but actually feel. They connect you to the road and make you part of the machine. There was nothing like it in its time. And maybe there never will be again. The first model, the MC16, was a true revolution in the world of 250cc sport bikes. Honda held nothing back and packed it with cutting-edge technology taken straight from racing. The star of the show was the RC valve system, revolutionary control valve, which electronically adjusted the opening of the exhaust valves according to the engine's RPM. The result? Optimal performance across the entire rev range, with smooth power delivery at low RPMs and a brutal surge at high RPMs. But the innovation didn't stop at the engine. Honda also went for an aluminum chassis, a rarity at the time, which gave it the perfect combination of rigidity and lightness. Its design wasn't just about looks. Every line was inspired by Grand Prix bikes, with aerodynamics optimized to slice through the wind like a hot knife through butter. Now let's talk numbers. It weighed just 138 kilos, a ridiculous figure even by today's standards, and had 45 horsepower. At first glance, that might not sound crazy, but on a bike that light, the sheer power-to-weight ratio was absolutely insane. The acceleration was so incredibly aggressive that if you weren't completely ready, it truly felt like you'd been launched off an aircraft carrier. With a sharp twist of the throttle, the NSR250 would catapult you forward as if Zeus himself had kicked you in the back. But Honda wasn't going to stop there. Honda didn't sit still, and in 1988 they released the NSR250R MC18. This is where things started to get serious. It wasn't just an update, it was a complete evolution that took the bike to another level. The suspension system was significantly improved with a more advanced front fork and a more refined rear monoshock, allowing for even better control at high speeds and also more precise cornering. Additionally, the brakes were upgraded with larger discs and more powerful calipers, ensuring that this beast could stop with the same ferocity with which it accelerated. But the most important part was in the engine. Honda introduced the second generation of the RC valve, its electronically controlled exhaust valve system, which was now more efficient and provided a more linear power delivery throughout the entire rev range. This meant that the NSR250R MC18 was not only faster, but also significantly more predictable and controllable, at least as much as possible when you have a powerful two-stroke engine that truly wants to rip your arms off every single time you twist the throttle. The aluminum chassis was optimized to reduce weight and improve torsional rigidity, which gave the bike incredible stability even out on the track. In the sharpest corners, if the first NSR250 was already agile, this version was like a scalpel in the bends, slicing through the road with surgical precision. Riders and motorcycle enthusiasts began to realize that this was not just an ordinary sport bike. It wasn't a bike for beginners or for those who just wanted a fast means of transportation. The NSR250R MC18 was truly a missile on wheels, a bike that genuinely demanded immense respect and exceptional skill. However, in the right hands, it offered a riding experience that no other street bike could possibly match at that particular time. We reached the 90s and Honda decided it was time to raise the stakes. The MC21 was not just an evolution, it was a true technological leap that left its predecessor behind. The big innovation was the introduction of the PGM3 system, a sophisticated electronic control that adjusted the opening of the exhaust valves and the power delivery with surgical precision. Thanks to this, the engine response became much more refined, achieving a perfect combination of explosive performance and ease of use on the street. But what truly drove fans absolutely crazy was the distinctive Ghoul Arm swing arm, a design directly inherited from Honda's racing bikes in the prestigious 500cc World Championship. This design not only effectively reduced unsprung weight, but also conveniently allowed for easier access to the chain, significantly improving chassis rigidity and making the bike even more stable in high-speed corners. Which clearly showed that Honda truly held nothing back when it came to giving their street bikes a very authentic racing DNA. And if that already sounded impressive, Honda decided to take things to the next level with the SP version, Sport Production. This version came equipped with ultra-lightweight magnesium wheels, which reduced unsprung weight and improved agility. It also featured higher quality suspension, allowing for finer adjustments for those who wanted to push the bike to its limits on the track. But the crown jewel was the dry clutch, a feature usually reserved for race bikes. Not only did it make every gear change a visceral experience, with that characteristic metallic and aggressive sound, but it also improved performance by preventing the engine oil from being contaminated with clutch debris. In short, the MC21 was not just another sport bike, it was a statement of intent from Honda. Cutting-edge technology, race-inspired design, and performance that made it clear this bike was born to dominate. The final version, the MC28, was the most advanced of them all, but it also marked the end of a golden era for two-stroke sport bikes. Honda spared no expense on technology and took refinement to the next level with the introduction of the PGM4 system, an evolution of the previous PGM3, which further improved the engine's electronic management. This system allowed for even more precise control of power delivery and optimized throttle response, making the MC28 the most sophisticated and refined version of the NSR250R. But what really caught everyone's attention was the introduction of the smart card system, the smart card key system, instead of a traditional key. Honda implemented a magnetic card that had to be inserted into the bike in order to start it. At the time, this seemed like technology straight out of a science fiction movie, and while today keyless ignition systems are common, In the 90s, this was truly revolutionary. Additionally, this card also effectively served as an anti-theft device, since without it the bike was completely impossible to start, something many riders truly appreciated at a time when sport bike theft was a constant and significant problem. However, despite all these innovations, something began to change in the industry. Emissions regulations began to significantly tighten globally, and two-stroke motorcycles, which until then had been widely synonymous with high performance and exhilarating excitement, started to be increasingly seen as highly polluting vehicles. Brands faced increasingly strict regulations and had to look for more efficient alternatives and cleaner ones. The prevailing trend was abundantly clear. Four-stroke engines were undeniably the future, and the glorious days of two-stroke sport bikes were definitively numbered. For Honda, this significant development meant making a truly tough and pivotal decision. The NSR250R, which had been an icon of sport motorcycles for more than a decade, was becoming a species on the verge of extinction. Sales began to decline, and although the bike was still adored by enthusiasts, it no longer fit into the future the industry was shaping. In 1996, Honda made the decision to stop manufacturing it. Without major announcements or spectacular farewells, the NSR250R simply disappeared from the catalogs, marking the end of an era for two-stroke sport bikes. For many, this represented the loss of one of the best motorcycles ever built. A model that encapsulated the pure thrill of riding and that today is still remembered as one of the absolute benchmarks in the history of sport motorcycles. And you might ask yourself, is it worth it? If you find one in good condition, yes, but be prepared to pay. These bikes have become collector's gems, with prices that have skyrocketed on the second-hand market. And it's not just about finding one, it's also about maintaining it. Scarce parts and mechanics who understand these engines are becoming harder and harder to find. But if you're lucky enough to ride one, you'll understand why so many consider it the best 250 sport bike ever made. It's a machine that turned anyone into a racer, and even though its time has passed, its legend lives on. So if you ever see an NSR250R on the street, take a good look, because you're not just seeing a motorcycle. You're looking at history, a relic from a time when motorcycles were wild, fast, and unfiltered.